You've been searching for the best way to generate passive income in your life and heard that real estate is a great way to do it. But you're tired of all the so-called gurus who are all talk and no substance. Get ready to celebrate because Kevin Buck has spent 14 years successfully making it happen. This is the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Now, here's Kevin Buck.
Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here with episode number 151 of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast, where I'm just to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. And our guest for this week's show is multifamily investment expert Paul Moore. Now, Paul's very first taste into real estate was in the single-family sector, where he flipped over 50 homes and 25 high-end waterfront lots. He also appeared on HGTV's House Hunters. He rehabbed and managed rental properties. He built a number of brand new homes, even developed a subdivision, and also started two very successful online real estate marketing firms prior to entering into the multifamily space. Now, Paul's specialty is purchasing Class B value-add garden-style apartment complexes in growing markets via a syndicated capital raise structure. And in today's show with Paul, we're going to be covering the following items. You're going to learn how Paul got his start in the large multifamily syndicated space. You'll learn how he was able to rebound from the recession of 2008 by focusing on giving and helping others versus focusing on the many struggles that he was facing in his very own real estate business. You'll learn how he built his first multifamily project in a man camp setting in North Dakota to house oilfield workers. You'll learn the numerous reasons why he loves B-class garden-style apartment complexes located in growing markets. You'll learn how he's using sources like biggerpockets.com and even writing a book to source awesome investment opportunities. You'll learn why he suggests that you not swing for the fence on your very first real estate investment and keep it a little bit more conservative. You'll learn the reasons you need to focus on your purpose and determine what kind of positive impact that you want to have on this world, and then use that as the blueprint to develop your company and your real estate business, and much, much more. And if this is the first time you're tuning in the show, I want to welcome you to our incredible family that we have here at the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. If you're one of the many thousands that tune in each and every week, I want to welcome you back and let all of you know how grateful I am that you choose to be here with me each and every week. And before we get on the show with Paul, I've got a few laundry list items I'd like to run through, okay? The first one, we've got some incredibly hot things happening here at Sunrise Capital Investors. Sunrise Capital Investors is my investment company. That is where we invest in mobile home parks, okay? That is what I do full-time, mobile home park investor, okay? Now, for those that don't know, we are in somewhat of a growth mode right now at Sunrise Capital Investors, and I want to be the first to share with you a recent goal that we just created for our company, and that is that in 5 years, it's a 5-year goal, in 5 years, we intend to have 10,000 mobile home park lots under ownership, okay? So 5 years, 10,000 mobile home park lots under ownership. You might wonder why I even mentioned this goal to you, okay? Well, in direct alignment to this huge lofty goal that we've just created for ourselves at 10,000 lots, we're going to be looking for some incredibly talented people to help us get there, okay? We can't do it alone, okay? We want to team up with others that can help us grow our company and get us where we want to be in 5 years, which is at 10,000 lots. And so, in the coming weeks, we're going to be sharing details about our newly developed apprenticeship program, where we're going to be holding open casting calls for a lucky few to grab a spot working side by side with us out of our Clearwater, Florida location. Okay, that's here at Sunrise Capital Investors. This is going to be an apprenticeship program. We're looking for a lucky few that are just going to be hustlers and just persistent individuals that are ambitious and looking to grow with an awesome company, okay? Now, I don't want to spoil the surprise too much for you guys, so you're going to have to stay tuned in order to learn more about this incredible opportunity that we're coming up with. Probably in the next 2 weeks, I'll have more information for you, but just know that we're going to be looking for a lucky few that are ready to hustle, are ready to bust their butt, and want to work with an awesome company, okay? Working side by side with myself, working side by side with my other two partners, and the rest of our team here at Sunrise Capital Investors, okay? So just stay tuned, and you'll have more information coming up here in the coming weeks. Next up, if you haven't already heard, my partner, Charles D. Hart, and myself are writing a book on mobile home park investing, and we expect it to be completed in the very near future, in the next month or two. And as a gift to you, and prior to putting it up for sale on Amazon, I'd like to offer you a free copy, okay? 100% absolutely free. This will be the most comprehensive book on mobile home park investing that you'll ever read. And so to get on our VIP wait list, this is just for you, okay? You're going to get the copy of the book right when it comes out before anyone else gets it, and also before it goes for sale on Amazon. What you need to do is text the word Kevin to 41411. Again, text the word Kevin to 41411, and we'll put you on that VIP list, and you will get the very first copy when it comes out. And then next up, guys, if you're an investor, a passive investor, you're looking to partner up with a proven entity, a proven team, and you're looking for higher than average returns on your capital, then you need to check out the opportunity that we have at Sunrise Capital Investors, okay? We're looking for accredited investors who are interested in partnering with us on mobile home park deals, okay? We've got a lot of deals in contract now, and as I just mentioned, we're in growth mode, and we're looking to add lots and lots. That's funny. We're looking to add many spaces, thousands of spaces to our portfolio over the coming years. So to learn more about our company, you can go to sunrisecapitalinvestors.com. You can also download our investment prospectus and our private placement memorandum. You can download all that stuff at our website, sunrisecapitalinvestors.com. And just two more things real quick, guys. I've been doing a lot of training videos on my Facebook page, okay? You can go find me at Real Kevin Bupp, okay? On Facebook, Real Kevin Bupp. And I host weekly training videos where I show you how to build large profits in the mobile home park and commercial real estate niche. And oftentimes you're going to find me broadcasting live from one of the properties that we own or one that we're in contract with, okay? So you'll get the first notice of when those videos are coming live or when I'm going to be doing a live stream, go to Real Kevin Bupp on Facebook and like the page, and you'll be notified when I'm going live, okay? I've been doing it at least once a week now, sometimes more than that. And then lastly, guys, if you happen to be in the Tampa Bay area, I'd love to meet you. So if you're here and you've got some extra time, before you come to town, just shoot me an email, kevin@kevinbupp.com. That's my personal email. And let's try and coordinate a time while you're here visiting, okay? I'd love to meet up with you, and I love sharing time and stories and everything else with others that have the same passion as I do for the real estate investment niche, okay? Now, guys, without further ado, let's get on to the show with Paul Moore. So here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, today on the show, we're thrilled to be joined by multifamily expert Paul Moore. Paul is a co-founder and director of Wellings Capital, an investment firm who specializes in multifamily income properties. In addition to being an active real estate investor, Paul is a published author with his featured title, The Perfect Investment, Create Enduring Wealth from the Historic Shift to Multifamily Housing. And in addition to publishing books and articles on the topic of multifamily investing, he also hosts a weekly podcast called How to Lose Money. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Paul Moore to the show. Paul, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Great to be here, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Looking forward to learning about you and your business. So, multifamily investing, it is the flavor of the decade, I think. Everyone's speaking about multifamily. So it's an exciting time, lots of opportunities out there. And so I'm really excited to kind of peel back the curtain a little bit and talk to you about your business and everything about multifamily. But before we do that, Paul, before we kind of dive into the discussion of multifamily investing, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you and your background, as well as our listeners would as well, just about who you are, kind of how you got your start, and how you got introduced to multifamily investing.
All right, great. Well, it's a long and winding road, let me tell you, Kevin. I had an engineering degree in petroleum engineering, and then I went on and got my MBA at the Ohio State University, went to Ford Motor Company, and a buddy of mine and I really liked Ford, but we got bored pretty quickly. So after about 4 or 5 years, we started a PEO, which is a professional employer organization. It's an HR outsourcing firm. I was finalist for Michigan Entrepreneur of the Year a couple years in a row, and then we ended up selling that company to a publicly traded firm. And I'll tell you, being semi-retired at 35 sounds really great and glamorous. Kevin, it was miserable.
I believe it. I can't imagine what I would do if I was retired at 35.
Well, yeah, you're a high energy entrepreneur as well, and I was too. And so I would sit in this little basement office I made in a house we built. We moved to the Blue Ridge Mountains and we started a nonprofit organization, but it was super slow moving, and I would sit there, and anytime the phone would ring, I'd grab it and I would act like I was out of breath. Oh, I'm so busy. I was like dying from boredom. And so anyway, So I was kidding myself. And anyway, so basically my friend had moved to the area. He was out of a job. And so we started flipping houses for fun. We would buy them for cash on the courthouse steps. We flipped them. Then we flipped, 2 or 3 at a time. Then we got up to like where we'd done over a couple dozen. Then I started building modular homes, which I had no business doing since I didn't know how to hang a doorknob. But anyway, we ended up building a stick-built home, and then we got into flipping waterfront lots at Smith Mountain Lake in Virginia. That was a lot of fun. We made a lot of money, but I ignored the cracks in the foundation. I think it was 2007. It could have been 6, but there was a front page. There was a cover story on, I think it was Fortune magazine, though I've never been able to find it again. It said, "The real estate bubble is about to burst." And, Simon and Garfunkel, those great prophets, said, "A man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest." So I disregarded that and ended up plunging into a whole lot of debt and a whole lot of misery during the Great Recession. I'll tell you a little more about that later. But anyway, after coming out of that, continued to do, I had a residential real estate website, which has done really well. I generate lots of residential leads. Every year we close, on dozens and dozens of deals through other realtors. And that actually survived the recession. But at some point during the recession, I heard about the opportunity to provide housing for oil field workers in North Dakota. So we went up to North Dakota to invest in oil and gas, and we saw guys living out of their trucks and living out of little campers. I mean, there were stories of guys building fires on their living room floor to stay warm in 40-degree weather, 40-degree below weather, I should say. And so we had no idea what we were doing, Kevin, but we quickly built a multifamily facility, fairly, mid-size, over, I think it was 130 doors or so. And we built it like from the ground up in an unbelievably short time. And as you probably know, rents in general across middle America go for, something like $1 a square foot, right, for multifamily. So an 800 square foot apartment might rent for, let's say, $800 a month, plus or minus, 40%. But we were renting these for, instead of $1 a square foot, we were getting $13 a square.
Oh my gosh.
And we were staying full. So we have these 300 to 400 square foot efficiencies. They were really high end. They even had granite countertops. So basically it reminded the guy of home, but it was just a little studio or efficiency. And we were renting them for $3,900 a month and staying totally full, or almost totally full. Yeah. So that's how I got into multifamily. Okay.
I want to hear more about that story, about that multifamily property up in oil and gas country, because as we know that the industry, it's on a comeback, I guess you could say, but it's been struggling for the past couple of years. So, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. Talk to me about some of the, I guess, this multifamily property you purchased. So you went from single family, and you guys literally built a ground up development, which is a very unique transition. Most people don't go from flipping single family homes to doing a ground up development, especially something so far away like in North Dakota. Such a random place, right? But the demand was there, the opportunity was there. Talk to me about the process or the path that you guys took as far as learning that business. You guys were thrown into it. Did you bring in mentors? Did you have consultants that helped you along the way? I think that's a very important part of the story, because that would tell us a lot about who you are and your drive as an entrepreneur.
Well, we were way too arrogant to bring in mentors. I'm going to jump forward. I have to. I am a really, really big believer in mentoring, and I have somebody I look to as my mentor now in the world of multifamily, and I love that, and I do that, and I believe in it. But at the time, we didn't really know. I don't think we were just in such a rush to get this built. We bought land, we got it under contract on a Saturday afternoon, and we had it closed by the end of the week. And then I kid you not, Kevin, there was no zoning in this county. There was literally no zoning. And it became a zone county later. You can check it out yourself. It's Watford City, North Dakota, little town of 4,000 that had 10,000 visitors. And we built this from the ground up. And I'll tell you this, that it's a little embarrassing to admit publicly, but almost 3 years later, when we went to sell it, we were selling it when the oil price was still like $95 a barrel. We just had a sense that this wasn't going to last forever. And so we sold it at the top of the market. But when the buyer in due diligence asked me for the rent roll, I said, "What's that?"
Oh boy.
I didn't even, so we were running this basically on instinct, and it worked, and it worked really, really well, but we didn't know what we were doing.
So were you guys able to exit out of that though at the peak?
Yeah, right at the peak.
Okay, so I mean that was kind of a rebound then for you. I mean, it sounds like you had some hard times during the recession, but this became your rebound, correct?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I can tell you more about what happened during the recession, which is a completely different story. But yeah, it was. And what I realized from that, if you read my articles on Bigger Pockets, I realized how foolish we were, and how what a bad idea it was not to have counsel, not to have mentoring. I mean, and I realized that it was incredibly risky. Kevin, there's a difference between investing and speculating, but we didn't know what it was. We thought we were investing. Investing is when your principal is generally safe and you have a chance to make a return. But speculating is when your principal is completely at risk and you have a chance to make a return. And I can tell you, development is a risky business, and it's a place where a lot of people hit grand slam home runs, but a whole lot of other people end up delivering pizzas at the end of their development career. And so anyway, we were taking enormous risks. And so when I realized how big of a risk we were taking, that's what got me into doing what I'm doing today, which is Class B, value add, garden style multifamily in large and growing cities.
Okay, fantastic. Well, before we move on to that, I want to hear a little bit about the struggles that you guys faced in the downturn. I mean, what is it that really sunk you? At that point, you were fixing and flipping homes. I mean, did you just get caught with a lot of inventory when the music stopped, or what exactly happened?
Yeah, I had, after we sold our company for, I think it was $2.9 million in 1997, 10 years later, before the recession really hit, I found myself about $2.5 million in debt. And one of the things I love about real estate is it wasn't just like my friend who had .com, equity or .com debt, where it like literally evaporated overnight almost. Mm-hmm. But we had real estate. And so even though it was $2.5 million in debt and I was making enormous interest payments, and my business partner, quit in January of 2008. He said, I can't make half these, payments anymore. But we still had real estate. We had something. And so I went to my friends who sat me down at Hardee's restaurant and said, "That's Carl's Jr. for you on the West Coast." And They sat me down. They said, "How are you going to avoid bankruptcy? Come on, let's be honest." And I said, "I don't think I'm going to have to go that route." And they said, "Well, why?" And I said, "I'm going to give my way out of debt." And they thought that was really odd. Well, about that time, I sat my 4 kids down and with my wife as well. And I said, "Guys, I don't see any way out of this. It's looking really bad. My income from residential real estate leads is drying up from the website, but I have some still. And we're pretty maxed out on debt." I said, "I think we should, we really believed in what I would call the law of sowing and reaping, and other people call it, karma. We believe that if we began to aggressively give, that providentially it was going to work out for us. So we actually began to give very aggressively, and we got more serious about volunteering with different things, and we basically understood that we didn't have any other way out, and that made sense to us at least. Well, Kevin, 4 weeks later, I was at a Subway restaurant, and there was a real estate developer there that I knew. We got to talking, and he said something that provided a light bulb moment for me. And I went into the county planning and zoning department and said, "Hey, I've got this 5-acre waterfront lot that you guys won't let me subdivide. here's how I want to subdivide it. And I basically took their law that would not allow me to subdivide, and I turned it on its head, and I said, well, what if I did it this way? And the lady looked at me like over the top of her glasses, like stunned. And she said, no one has ever used the law that prevents something to allow them to do it, but you just figured it out. And she said, you're right, you can do it. So we subdivided that lot. We had to fight with bankers. We had to get attorneys involved. We had a lot of other hoops to jump through in the next year. But Kevin, 13 months later, I was completely debt-free and had even paid off my house.
Very interesting. I want you to elaborate a little bit more on how you got that rezoned. I mean, how did you get that subdivided, or not rezoned, but subdivided when basically the county was saying no? I mean, tell us more, please.
It's fairly technical and complicated, but I'll try to do a quick summary. There is a law that you're probably aware of in most states called the family exemption. And the family exemption was set up for people who had, let's say, 100 acres, and they had a child or two children who were getting married, and they wanted to give them 5 acres each, but not on the main road. Like, let's say down a private lane, they wanted to cut off an acre or 5 acres for them to build their house. Mm-hmm. Or it could be for an in-law who was aging, and they wanted to give them a place to live, but not along the main road. Let's say they just had, 300 feet of road frontage, and they wanted to be down in the, in the back 40 or whatever. This law said you can cut off a piece of land, you can donate it to a family member, but they can't sell it for, I think it was 3 or 5 years. So they had to hold on to it. Let's say it was 5 years. So this developer said, why don't you use the family exemption to cut up that land into 5? I said, that means I'd have to give it to 5, one piece to everyone, like to 4 family members, and then they couldn't sell it for like 5 years. He said, yeah, but the law doesn't say what you can or cannot do with the, quote, parent tract. In other words, the tract you cut from. He said, you can sell that at any time, can't you? And I said, no way. They wouldn't let that. Well, that's exactly what we did.
Wow.
And so here's kind of how it played out. We sold, so each lot, it was a waterfront subdivision, and these lots would have gone for like $600,000, but in the recession, they were probably at $350,000. I sold the entire 5 acres to a guy who trusted me a whole lot for about $1.3 million. Then he cut off an acre, donated it to his wife, and then he had 4 acres left. Well, again, the law didn't say he could or could not sell that because nobody had ever thought of this. No one ever thought about selling or not selling the original tract. So he sold his 4 acres to the next guy for $1 million. The next guy in line bought it for $1 million, donated an acre to his wife. His wife has to hold it for 5 years now, but he took his 3 remaining acres and sold it for $700,000. And then the next guy took his 2 remaining acres and sold it for $400,000. The next guy, anyway, the last guy ended up with an acre at $300,000. And so they all ended up with tracts of land that they couldn't sell for 5 years, but they didn't care because they got a great deal. And I ended up taking $863,000 in debt and turning it into $500,000 profit.
That's awesome. I love it. So that progression, it really played out that way? I mean, literally just sold it. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Here's what happened though. We had to go to BB&T. Oops, did I say that? We had to go to our wonderful bank that we really truly loved. No, we really do love BB&T. That's my bank, and they're still my bank today. But we had to go to them and sell them on this idea and say, look, would you allow this debt? Would you give a buyer $1.3 million or a loan, against $1.3 million to purchase this from me? And they said, no way. That's just too risky. And I had one of those Braveheart moments, where I basically threw the papers down on the desk, stood up, and basically said, well, you're going to get this deed back in your, and so I stormed out of the office. I'm still really happy about that moment. But anyway, I had to get a lawyer, and we ended up negotiating with them, and it worked out.
Okay. Well, fantastic. That's a great story. I love that, Paul. Thanks for sharing.
You bet.
So let's talk about multifamily now. I want to dive into your business a little bit and let's just learn a little bit more about what it is you guys are looking for. So you'd mentioned B-class value add opportunities in growing cities. What does that mean?
Well, Kevin, I don't know if you can't really tell where the height of the market is, but I'm concerned, as a lot of people are, that maybe in a lot of markets we're hitting the limit. I mean, I don't know where Tampa, what it looks like down your way, but in a lot of markets, it looks like maybe things are overheated, overpriced. And so we are looking for value add opportunities because we believe if the cap rates expand from, let's say, 6% to 7%, well, that's an expansion of 1/6, right? It's 1% out of 6. And that's about, 16, 17% loss in value. Mm-hmm. So we're looking for value add opportunities that can more than make up for that potential loss in value over the coming 5 or 10 years. And so that's why we do value add. We want to be in large and growing cities. We want to be in cities where there's not a huge up and down revaluation in a recession. So honestly, we don't generally buy in California, Florida, Nevada, Arizona, when there's been huge swings in value. Mm-hmm. We're looking in cities where there is a net population migration, people coming to the area like Austin or Denver or Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Charlotte, Greenville, South Carolina, Chattanooga we really like. Mm-hmm. And we're looking for places, where there's a diverse economy, lots of different employers, not relying on one industry like military, for example. And we're looking for basically Class B. So, 30, 40-year-old apartments that are outdated and can be brought up to, be updated, and where the rents can be raised, and then mm-hmm. value is increased for the investors, of course.
And what kind of opportunities are you guys seeing out there at this point in time in those various markets that you're searching? Because I agree with you that I think that there are a lot of markets throughout the U.S. and everything's local, right? So every market is specific to itself. But and I'm not in multifamily, but I still follow the market. I know what's happening. I speak to enough people that are in this niche, and I'm kind of hearing the same feedback from most, is that it's very challenging to find good opportunities. Whether you're a value add investor or not, it's very challenging. There's lots of people out there that are just overpaying for stuff at this point. So what are you seeing? I mean, like firsthand experience of what you're seeing in the various markets that you're searching in.
Well, I can tell you it is really tempting to overpay, especially when you have investors, which we do. We pull together investors mm-hmm. through a syndication model. It's very tempting. I had a large investor in China who I think, frankly, was a little frustrated with me when we walked away from yet another opportunity in Virginia about 1 or 2 months ago, where he's like, "Look, I got this guy. He really, really needs to invest." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I'm just not going to overpay." So frankly, we've had a lot of competition for almost every deal. The few that we've seen that were under marketed or off market, they had so many issues with them that we didn't want to close on them. But we frankly, it's been really, really challenging to find the right deal. And we've went, probably, the last year or so, our plan is to buy 3 or 4 assets a year, but we went about the last year. Fortunately, right now we have an asset in Chattanooga, Tennessee that we're very excited about, and we're about to sign the contract. We have a LOI with them, and we're moving forward on that.
Okay. And how are you guys finding opportunities? Is it primarily through brokers?
Generally, we're working through brokers, but mm-hmm. I'm also meeting people through Bigger Pockets and through podcasts who are reaching out to me, and they say, "Hey, I've got this friend who has an apartment or whatever." Mm-hmm. So brokers, and then generally casting the net through Bigger Pockets and podcasts, I'd say. Have you taken my book?
Okay. Yeah. I bet you that book actually brings you a lot of good feedback and some good opportunities as well. Have you taken the creative route of doing any kind of direct to owner type prospecting, direct mail, cold calling, anything like that?
I love that idea. And my son actually is buying timberland right now, and he is writing handwritten letters to these owners. But I actually think that is a great way to go, and I think we're going to try to, at some point, maybe do FedEx letters mm-hmm. to people, to where there's a higher likelihood they'll actually open it and read it. But if that doesn't work, another idea I have is in something that I think, Kevin, I might have heard that you've done this, something like this. Basically, try to develop personal relationships with the owners and find out what their real needs are. And then at that point, maybe we would just approach them more as somebody who we got to know and say, hey, if you're ever interested in selling, let's talk. So.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what we do. In fact, it's very rare nowadays that we actually buy anything that is listed or from a broker. Not that I'm opposed to it. It just seems like once it hits the open market, or once even a pocket listing has competition, and
right.
And it's the broker's responsibility to get the highest and best number for their client, right? I mean, that's their job, and so I get it. And I'm not mad at them. I'm just mad at the market more than anything else, and I don't like competition. Right. So we've gotten really good over the past couple of years, and I guess I've always been this way. Everything that we've ever bought, so whether it was at their time we were doing single family homes, or I've owned hundreds of apartment units, and today for the past 5 years, it's been mobile home parks. We've always been very direct to owners. That's always worked really, really well for us, and so that's exactly what we do. I mean, direct mail, we cold call, and we just establish relationships. And of the 7 mobile home parks we bought last year, all 7 of them were direct to owner, off market, weren't listed for sale, and we've got 6 on our board right now that are in contract, and 4 of those 6 are off market, direct to owner. Just building the relationships. Some take a long time. I mean, the longest deal cycle we've had was 2.5 years. From the first point of contact.
Wow.
And but it just we won it out, and we didn't have any competition. It's worked in our favor if you're willing to kind of stick with it and build that relationship and do it in a bigger way. So it's all about a volume game, right? So I've got 100 plus contacts in my CRM of people I've spoken with, and they're all different, they're graded differently in my CRM system. And I set reminders for follow up. I send Christmas cards. I send Thanksgiving cards and things like that. I just check in with them, give them a phone call, check in with them over the summertime, see how their summer's going. Just little things like that, little touches here and there, with the idea that hopefully I touch them enough times and I make enough of an impact on them that they think of me when the time comes for them to sell. I'm not saying that they're going to sell to me at the right price, or that they're not going to pitch it out there to the rest of the world, but I think if I plant my seed well enough, I've got a good opportunity at making something happen. Because a lot of the people we buy from are mom and pops, and I have found that not that they're unsophisticated, they're just longtime owners. They've owned for 15 plus years. It's kind of a family asset. I found that they would prefer to sell to someone that they like versus necessarily getting the highest and best price. That's been my experience. So might be something you want to check out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, so you started with a direct mail piece in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, we've always done both cold calling and direct mail, but I mean, it depends. I mean, so we have a pretty large database. We prospect in now we're probably over 100 markets, and some of these markets are very small. But we've got, I guess, probably about 3,000 or 4,000 mobile home parks that we've researched. They're in markets that we like. And they either get direct mails from us first, or they get a cold call. But then they always, in the cycle of the prospecting, they get a little bit of both. Like if they get the cold call first, then there's going to be a letter coming after that as a follow-up. If they get the direct mail first, there's going to be a cold call coming as a follow-up. And so we just track exactly how we've touched them the first time, the second time, the third time. We track that so that we're not being redundant and that our message is congruent, if that makes sense. So we always know what they've received in the past. We always make it very personalized. Technology allows us to accomplish a lot nowadays without ever having to visit a property. And so we can see a lot, and we can personalize our letters. And sometimes, I mean, it takes time, takes energy, but our response rate's huge. And a lot of times we'll specifically mention something about the park, or, go on Google Earth and take a look at it, right? And make a mention of something in the area or something in the park that just would make them believe that, hey, he actually knows what he's talking about. He's not just sending this mailer out to a million different people. He knows my park. And a lot of people have emotional attachments to their properties, whether it be an apartment building or a mobile home park. They have emotional attachments to that investment. And so our response rate is typically on the low end, and Florida's for some reason, Florida doesn't get a great response, probably because there's lots of competition here, but 2% on the low end, and we've had as high as 9 and 10% response rates on our direct mailers.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
But it's very laser focused. I mean, I'm talking extremely laser focused. There's about 50,000 mobile home parks parks in the U.S., and our database is under 4,000 in size, and we've researched every single one of those markets that those parks are in, and we've seen aerial images and views of every single one of those parks that we're sending to. We haven't seen them personally, but we know there's a very good chance, based on the size of it, based on the location, proximity to the metro that it's in, that that we would have an interest in it at the right price. So. Yeah.
Well, so Kevin, I had another idea while you're talking. What about? I know you have another podcast for mobile home investors.
Mm-hmm.
What if you invited these people? What if you couldn't get through to them as necessarily on the front end as a seller, but you basically honored them and invited them on your podcast as a guest?
I've thought about that. It's a very interesting concept, and someone else had brought that to my attention as well. And I like it. My only challenge is here's some of the approaches we take with people. Like, we approach them as there's a benefit I've seen from doing split testing with smaller operators, that they like dealing with what they would perceive to be a smaller company versus a larger company. And what I don't want to do is necessarily make it seem like I'm like this big time operator and I've got a radio show, this, that, and the other, because it might actually rub some people the wrong way, especially if I've been kind of playing the card of, hey, I'm this small. I mean, we are a small company. At the end of the day, we're a small company, but it's all relative, right? Some people might think we're a big company. In my mind, I think we're a small company. But I like the idea. I just have not moved forward with it yet. So,
Oh, good.
Yeah. But either way, I love it. I mean, creative thinking is what it's all about. You got to do what others aren't willing to do. And I mean, it all ties back to, like cold calling, for instance. A lot of people are scared to death of picking up the phone and making a cold prospecting call to anyone, whether you're selling a tchotchke or calling on an apartment building or a mobile home park. And you get yelled at sometimes. You get a lot of no's. Don't call me again. Take me off your list. But that one in every 40 or 50 that you call that is receptive to your call and is willing to talk to you, that's the one that maybe you're not going to buy today, that goes into your database, and it goes into your follow-up process, and you stay in touch with them, and you've already made some kind of impact on them. You've had a discussion, you've opened up a dialogue, and you carry it to the end, right? You carry it to the finish line. So.
Yeah, wow, that's really encouraging to hear you say that, because it's you get as a property owner, you get all kinds of cards in the mail that I ignore, but I love your idea of dialing in on a certain detail to make them feel like it is personalized.
We never done the FedEx. Actually, we used to knock on doors when we were buying single family homes, and we used to. We'd go, actually, if you have a FedEx account, you can obviously order a lot of supplies for free because they think you're going to use them by shipping mail. And so we would order hundreds of FedEx Express envelopes. And we would go knock on doors that were in pre-foreclosure. I'd go knock on probably about 20 doors a night. This is many, many years ago. And I would put a letter. It was a lifesaver letter, and it had like a little lifesaver attached to it. It'd be inside that FedEx envelope. The envelope didn't have a label on it, but no one would know the difference. So if they weren't home, I would leave that envelope stuck in between their storm door or at their front door underneath their doormat. Everyone opens up a FedEx envelope. No one ever questioned why it didn't have a label on it.
That's great.
Because it could get quite expensive if you're shipping FedEx letters to people. I mean, you're talking $10 a pop. It gets quite expensive. So
yeah, right.
we do handwritten mailers. We use regular number 10 envelope, white envelopes. Sometimes we use invitation style envelopes. But I mean, if it's handwritten, you got to think of it this way. And this goes to and I don't want to digress too much here, but you had mentioned doing the FedEx thing. If you received a number 10 envelope and they had a handwritten address on with a normal stamp, out of curiosity, I don't care if you receive them all the time or not, no matter what, you're going to open it up, right? Just out of curiosity, you are going to open it up. It is not going to end up in the trash can. Would you agree with me on that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, curiosity would kill somebody if they toss that in the trash. They would pull it back out probably later on that evening and open it up. They wouldn't be able to go to sleep. So,
what about the return address? Do you ever leave that blank?
No, we used to. I had a mortgage company for many years. We did about 100,000 mailers a month, and we got it really down to a T to where like we knew our response rates, we knew our database was very good, and so it got to a point where we got so much return mail back that we were like, you know what, let's just not put the return on there. So we didn't, because we didn't really want them back. But now we send such small mailers. Like our normal mailing campaigns, 300-400 letters at a time. And so I want those back because I really want to laser focus our database. We're not sending to 100,000 people. We're sending to a few hundred. And so I want to scrub that list. And if I get a return piece of mail, I want to know why. And I want to go find an alternate address for them. Or I want to find a relative. If they moved and they haven't, provided the forwarding address to the post office, I want to contact one of the relatives, which we do. I mean, I'll contact a brother, a sister, a parent, an uncle, an aunt, anyone that might know their whereabouts and how I can reach them. So yes, now we do. We always put a return address on there, and I don't think it negatively affects the open rate. In fact, I think it might have quite the opposite effect. I mean, I might be very suspicious if I get a letter that does not have a return address on it. But I can tell you that I use my personal name. I use I use my home address. I don't even use my office address. I use my home address. I use my personal name, and I put a return label on it. We used to handwrite it, but I just put a normal return label on there, and it works. I've never seen any difference in the response rate from a printed label on the return. That's on the return. We do handwrite the actual addressee, but a printed return label versus a handwritten return label versus a just keeping the return address off of there. I've never seen any difference whatsoever in response rate. So just some food for thought.
That's great.
Thought there. So I want to talk a little bit about your funding structure. I know that you guys you actually syndicate. Are you primarily deal specific on opportunities, or are you guys actually operating a blind pool right now?
We are not doing a blind pool. One of my partners, who is the co-founder and chairman of the 7th largest property management firm in the U.S., has a lot of experience raising funds through pools. He actually, if you remember the football movie that came out 2 years ago called Woodlawn, he raised $15 million for that. And he was starting a fund for films, and he would like to get to that level, but right now we're just doing individual deals.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, we actually just opened up our first fund. It's the first one I've ever done, literally about a week and a half ago. So I've done deal-specific capital raises, and this will be our first go-around with the fund. So it'll be quite interesting to see how it goes. I'm pretty excited, actually. It gives us a lot of flexibility and allows us to be a little bit more nimble on our feet when opportunities come about.
Right. So basically the main advantage for you is having cash available when the opportunity arises, right?
Yeah. We have currently, as we're talking here today, we've got, I believe, six or seven parks in contract. And, we're kind of ramping up our marketing, and logistically, let me say this, probably 2 or 3 will fall apart, right? And so let's just say we close 4 of those that are up on our board right now. Logistically, doing a deal-specific capital raise for 4 of those is a nightmare. It's expensive with regards to PPM preparation and legal expenses and such. And it's a cluster. And so in our mind, even if we only did, it was an idea like 3 months ago. Like even if we just did, 3 or 4 deals, and that was like the entire size of the fund, then it would still make more sense than doing them all as individual deal specific. So it offered diversity to the investors and allowed us a little bit easier funding advantage than trying to do them all individually. And but now, as we thought through it more, we figured we'd just ramp up our marketing. We've got the systems and processes in place to take on more deals. I mean, we could probably take in another 1,000 units, and not necessarily not blink an eye, but like we could easily take in another 1,000 units ownership management over the next year, and still proceed moving forward and do it in a very structured manner. So the fund allows us that flexibility to have the capital available to be able to be nimble on our feet. Now, it's a $10 million fund. That's kind of small numbers in comparison to what multifamily prices are, but and that's obviously, it's going to be a leveraged fund, but we don't have to fund all $10 million. So we're not taking in more money than what we need at any given point in time. Like right now, we need about $3 million in equity to close out the deals we have on the board, and we've got some other deals in the pipeline coming behind it. So our plan is to raise in tranches. Like I'm not going to take $10 million in if I've only got a need for $3 million at this given point in time. So I think there's a very fine balancing act, so that you never get into the situation where you're feeling pressured to purchase. You're feeling pressured to buy deals because you've got money sitting in there that's accumulating preferred returns. That's a situation I never want to get into. And so I guess we're probably doing it slightly different than maybe some larger fund operators, where they go out in a capital raising spree and they bring in as much money as possible. And then they find, they're working on the deal flow simultaneously, but they've got to buy deals. Like they're forced to buy opportunities, and I never want to be forced to buy anything. I want to buy something. I want to buy deals that make sense, but not buy deals just because I've got the capital to do so.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So what do you see? What do you see from new investors that are? I'm sure you probably get asked a lot. Those that reach out to you via your podcast because of the book that you've written. People that are looking to get into the multifamily space. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see from new investors that are looking to get started in this space? I mean, what are the big challenges they're facing, and what kind of advice do you give them to help them overcome them?
Well, that's a great question. So someone called me today, and they're a surgeon, and they're in California, and they really don't like to pay taxes, and they're kind of concerned with the future of the stock market. And so this particular investor, for them, it was they felt that investing in commercial real estate made a lot of sense on both those fronts, that they were able to get out of the stock market. They were able to get something that had, obviously there's no guarantee to the bottom end, but it's very unlikely that, a mobile home park or a multifamily asset is going to go to zero value as stock, can. So it was just a perfect fit for them. But I think people are nervous. Of course, people are always nervous. There's always some people who are nervous about whether, Hillary or Trump or Obama or Reagan, whoever's president. So I think there's always people realize, if you look at how many people join Bigger Pockets every day, there are people always interested in finding out more about real estate. And when people find out that, a lot of the Forbes 400 either got or maintain a lot of their wealth through commercial real estate, I think it's, there are people just always looking and trying to figure out, how do I get into this? Now, the problem is scale. And, you flipped houses, I flipped houses over the years. And, if you try to self-manage rental homes, I mean, since this podcast started, I'm getting texts from the one single individual renter I've had for like 14 years saying, literally, I could read the text, but I don't want to be disrespectful. The texts are saying, I don't have any money to buy my grandkids' birthday presents, and I have a water leak, and would you come fix this? And it's like, this is a rent-to-own buyer who just, didn't close. You know how that goes. And, they are well aware that they're supposed to fix their own stuff, and I'm not fixing it, even though we have been soft over the years. But anyway, the challenges of getting into real estate at a onesie, twosie, duplex, triplex, a fourplex level are very, very hard. And a lot of people quit and sell their portfolio at a discount after they just can't take it anymore. But the problem, Kevin, is getting in at a big level. I mean, if you want to get in at 100 units level where there's a lot of economies of scale and you can have an on-site management team, well, you have to have a lot of liquidity, a lot of net worth. You have to have a reputation with brokers. You have to have a reputation with lenders. There's just a lot of hurdles. And so I think that's why crowdfunding is really appealing to people now, because it allows them, like the guy on the phone this morning, to get in with a company like CrowdStreet or Realty Mogul, to get into a, 300 unit apartment deal at a small level. Now, what they don't get is the experience of really doing the deal themselves and the resume if they really want to, go out and syndicate themselves. But working with people like Michael Blanc, who Jake and Gino, Joe Fairless, with our company, you can do that. You can invest and you can learn as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great advice. I mean, I think that's a good path for a lot of people that are looking to get into this business. And crowdfunding has changed the space in such a big way. Although you're right. I mean, if your interest is actually becoming an active investor, it's probably not the right place for you. It's not the right fit because you're not really going to learn too much. You might learn how to read through a PPM, understand an offering doc, but you're not going to actually learn the business. You're not going to understand the mechanics of the business. But then again, you're still being given the opportunity to participate in deals that would never have been on your radar before. People didn't know how to find these types of opportunities, right? It was really your network prior to the allowance of general solicitation. you either had to network your butt off and find other people that were doing these types of deals to find, the opportunity to participate in them. Otherwise, you just didn't know they existed, right? I mean, it was just kind of off the radar screen. So times have changed, and I think they've changed for the better.
Right. Yep. Agreed.
So if you could go back into year one, I mean, let's go way back when you were just flipping houses, or I guess let's step back before that, before you did your first real estate deal. Go back into year one of when you were first getting your feet wet as a real estate investor, and give yourself some advice after knowing what you know today and after going through what you've already been through. What would that advice be?
Well, I mentioned in my book, Kevin, that if I could somehow magically tell myself when I was in grad school what to do, that I would have absolutely recommended getting involved in commercial real estate and doing it at a young age. I mean, I'm in my 50s, and I really, really wish that I would have done this a lot sooner. My assistant is 23 years old, and I think I've convinced him of the merits of getting involved at a young age. And another thing I would recommend is don't swing for the fences with all your investment capital. There have been things that I knew were a sure thing, like the oil and gas venture that went south, the wireless internet company I co-founded way back when that, never really was profitable. There are so many things that look great, but again, it's that idea of the difference between speculating and investing. Don't speculate with all your capital. It's fine to do it with 10%, and it's probably more fine when you're younger than when you're older, but there's going to come a time when the glitter wears off that and you realize, hey, I'd rather hit singles from my 40s through my 70s than keep swinging for the fences and striking out. Because, I mean, if you play double or nothing enough, you're going to end up with nothing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You don't have to hit home runs every time. I mean, just take your time, have a long-term plan, and if you just bought one good, decent property every 5 years, that's a great 15, 20-year plan, right? I mean, depending on what age you're at and how long you're planning, like how long you have to actually fulfill that plan. But I mean, swing for the fences, you might not ever find anything, or you just might lose everything, in that first go around. So, right. Yeah, there's lots of money to make in this business, but there's also lots of opportunity to lose that money as well, getting involved in the wrong types of investments. So, Paul, we're going to wrap up the show here now, but before we go, I'd like to ask if you wouldn't mind, this is kind of what I call the golden nugget segment of the show, and this is where we're going to say goodbye to one another. But before we say goodbye, if you had one final golden nugget of advice or wisdom that you could leave with our listeners today that you may inspire and motivate them as they progress in their real estate investing career, what would that one last golden nugget be? And this could be core principles you live by, success habits, motivational quote, whatever it might be. There's no right or wrong answer here.
Okay, well, so what I mentioned earlier about not swinging for the fences is one big one, but another one I really want to leave is this. I really believe that if you became a multimillionaire through an inheritance or winning a lottery tomorrow, you probably would be the same person with the same hangups, the same faults that you are today, and they'd probably be magnified. And I think that there's a lot of data out there on lottery winners to prove that.
I think there's a reality show.
Yeah, right. So my advice to people is to consider the possibility of setting up your life at a young age to begin to give back generously. And so we set up our company, and all of us are in our 50s, and we all have other businesses that we've, where we have money from and we've made money. And so we set up the company to do something that we're really, really passionate about right up front. And I don't know if you've heard much about human trafficking, but if you took the combined record profits, Kevin, of Nike, Starbucks, General Motors, and Apple, the combined record profits, double that. That's the approximate estimated revenue from human trafficking. Modern day slavery right now.
Oh my gosh.
And it's stunning to think that, but it's about $150 billion. That was actually as of 2012, and it's much worse now. Take the combined population of every man, woman, and child in Pennsylvania and Virginia, 21 million people, and imagine those people gone tomorrow. That's how many people are enslaved around the world right now through human trafficking. So our company is set up kind of like Tom's shoes. You buy a pair of shoes. You don't have to share your shoes with a child in a third world country. You get to keep both shoes, obviously. But Tom's Shoes takes money out of their corporate profits and they donate to buy a pair of shoes for a child in a third world country. Well, our company, we give our investors all of their return on investment. We don't take a penny out of that, but then we allow the investor to advise us what they're passionate about. And if that's drilling water wells in a third world country, or what we're passionate about, which is, like I mentioned, human trafficking, we will basically donate to, in a big way, to organizations that investor and that we are passionate about. And that's how we've set up our company in advance.
I love that, Paul. I mean, it really is all about giving back and helping others. So that's absolutely incredible. I'd love to actually pick your brain a little bit more about that. We're running out of time here, but I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about that on the side note. But Paul, in case those that are listening in, they want to reach out to you, learn more about you and your company, I've got wellingscapital.com. Is that the best place to learn more about you and your philosophy, your company, and as well as contact you?
Yeah, wellingscapital.com is great. You can find me on Bigger Pockets, and then you can find my book at Amazon or on my website, and the book's called The Perfect Investment. Kind of an arrogant title, huh?
No, it really is a perfect investment. Multifamily is it. Everyone needs a roof over their head, and multifamily allows you to offer it in scale. So, well, Paul, this has been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate you coming to the show, and I wish you all the success here in the future as you move forward in your multifamily career. You take care, bud.
Thanks, Kevin. It's been a great pleasure and honor.
Congratulations! Now you've got more of the best tricks of the trade in building massive amounts of passive income from real estate. For more amazing resources, visit realestateinvestingforcashflow.com. And we'll see you next Monday morning.